The Great Hall of the Galactic Union stretched for nearly a mile in every direction. Its ceiling disappeared into darkness above, and the walls were lined with thousands of seats. Each seat held a delegate from a different world. Some delegates were tall and thin like walking sticks. Others were short and round like balls of fur. A few floated in tanks of water or breathed through special masks. The hall was full of colors, sounds, and smells that no human could fully describe. At the center of this enormous space stood a single podium. Behind it sat the High Council, 12 beings chosen from the oldest and most powerful species in the galaxy. They looked down at the gathered delegates with expressions that ranged from boredom to disgust. Ambassador stood at the podium. She was a small woman with black hair tied back in a simple knot. Her formal suit was dark blue, and she wore no jewelry except for a small pin shaped like Earth on her collar. She stood very still with her hands folded in front of her. The vote had just finished. The numbers floated in the air above her head, displayed in a hologram that everyone could see. 847 votes in favor, 1 vote against, 0 votes to abstain. Earth had been expelled from the Galactic Union. The delegate from Prime stood up. He was a tall creature covered in gray scales, and his yellow eyes blinked sideways as he spoke. The human representative may now address the council before departing. A wave of whispers moved through the hall. Many delegates leaned forward in their seats. They expected tears. They expected anger. They expected the human to beg for mercy or threaten revenge. Humans were known for their emotions, after all. They were famous throughout the galaxy for being unable to control their feelings. Looked up at the numbers still floating above her head. She studied them for a moment as if she was seeing them for the first time. Then she lowered her gaze and looked at the High Council. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was calm and clear. It carried easily through the massive hall without any sign of trembling. The delegate blinked again. "Thank you." "Yes," said. "Thank you for making this decision so clear. 847 to 1. There is no confusion about where we stand." She turned slowly, looking at the thousands of delegates arranged in their seats. Some of them shifted uncomfortably. Others stared back at her with open hostility. "Earth accepts this decision," continued. "We will not appeal, we will not protest, we will not ask for another vote." This caused a stir in the hall. The delegate from the collective, a being made of living crystal, spoke up. "You accept expulsion so easily, after 50 years of membership." 53 years, corrected gently. "And yes, we accept it. A partnership must be wanted by both sides. Clearly, we are not wanted here." High Counselor leaned forward in his seat. He was ancient even by the standards of his long-lived species, and his skin was the color of dried leaves. "You are taking this remarkably well, Ambassador. I expected more resistance from your kind." "My kind," repeated. She let the words hang in the air for a moment. "Tell me, Counselor, what exactly is my kind known for?" Waved one of his 4 hands dismissively. "Emotion, stubbornness, an inability to accept reality." "Interesting," said. "And yet here I am, accepting reality. Perhaps you do not know humanity as well as you think." A ripple of uncomfortable laughter moved through some sections of the hall. Other delegates simply looked confused. The delegate from Earth's neighboring sector, a furry being called Ambassador, stood up. His people had voted in favor of expulsion. "What will you do now?" he asked. "Earth cannot survive without Union trade routes. Your ships cannot travel without Union navigation charts. Your colonies will starve without Union supply lines." Turned to face him directly. "Is that a concern or a threat, Ambassador?" Sfur bristled. "It is simply a fact. Humans spread too quickly. You established colonies on 17 worlds in just 50 years. You took resources that other species needed. We purchased those resources legally," interrupted. "Every transaction was approved by Union law." "The law can be changed," said. "Clearly," replied. She gestured at the vote count still floating above her. That is exactly what has happened today. High Counselor raised a hand for silence. Enough. The decision has been made. Ambassador, you have 72 standard hours to remove all human personnel from Union space. After that time, any human ship found in our territory will be considered hostile. Nodded slowly. 72 hours, that is, acceptable. Acceptable, another counselor, a being who looked like a cloud of purple gas contained in a transparent suit, spoke with surprise. You need at least a month to evacuate your people properly. We will manage, said. However, I do have one small request. His eyes narrowed. What request? I would like to send a final message to all Union worlds before we depart. A farewell, if you will, something to mark the end of our partnership. The council members looked at each other. This was an unusual request, but it seemed harmless enough. What could one message do? Very well, said. You may send one message through the Union communication network. After that, all human access will be terminated. Thank you, said. She bowed slightly, a human gesture that most aliens found strange but not offensive. Earth is grateful for this final courtesy. She turned and began walking toward the exit. Her footsteps echoed in the sudden silence of the hall. Thousands of alien eyes watched her go. The delegate from the Dominion, a massive being with 4 arms and armored skin, called out to her. Human, are you not going to fight? Are you not going to argue? This is not like your species at all. Stopped walking. She stood still for a moment, her back to the assembly. Then she turned her head slightly, showing her profile. Fighting requires energy, she said. Energy is precious. We prefer to spend it wisely. She continued walking. The doors of the great hall opened before her, and she stepped through them without looking back. Behind her, the delegates began talking among themselves. Some were relieved that the humans had accepted their fate so quietly. Others were suspicious. A few were already worried about what would happen next. High Counselor watched the doors close behind the human ambassador. Something felt wrong. He had dealt with hundreds of species over his long life. He had seen empires fall and civilizations rise. He knew what defeat looked like. And this did not look like defeat. The human had been too calm, too accepting. She had not shown any of the emotion that humans were famous for. She had simply nodded and walked away as if the expulsion meant nothing to her. Turned to his fellow counselors. I want surveillance on all human activity for the next 72 hours. Every ship, every communication, everything. Is that necessary? Asked the purple gas being. They are leaving peacefully. Perhaps, said, but humans are never simple. There is always something more beneath the surface. Meanwhile, walked through the corridors of the Union headquarters. Her footsteps were steady and unhurried. Her face showed nothing. When she finally reached the human embassy, she stepped inside and closed the door behind her. The room was empty except for a small team of staff members who had been watching the vote on their screens. Her assistant, a young man named One, stood up immediately. Ambassador, are you all right? Let out a long breath. For the first time since the vote, she allowed a small smile to appear on her face. I am fine, she said. Better than fine, actually. The staff members looked at each other in confusion. They had just watched their species get expelled from the most powerful organization in the galaxy. This did not seem like a time for smiling. Begin evacuation protocols, said. Contact all human ships in Union space. Tell them to return to Earth immediately. All of them? One asked. But that includes the rescue teams, the medical ships, the supply convoys. All of them, confirmed. Every single one. And make sure to send confirmation receipts for every vessel. I want a complete record of every human leaving Union space. What about the emergency response stations? Asked another staff member, a woman named. Station 12 is in the middle of a rescue operation right now. 3 mining ships hit an asteroid field. Smile faded slightly. How long until the rescue is complete? At least another 6 hours. Was quiet for a moment, then she shook her head. Pull them out. But Ambassador, the Union has made their decision, said. We are no longer welcome here. That means our services are no longer available. Pull out the rescue teams. His face went pale. Those miners will die. Perhaps the Union will send their own rescue ships, said. Her voice was not cruel, but it was firm. We cannot help people who do not want us here. She walked to the window and looked out at the alien city surrounding the headquarters. Towers of crystal and metal stretched toward the sky. Ships of every shape and size flew between them. It was beautiful in its own way. They think we need them, said quietly. They think we cannot survive without their technology, their trade routes, their protection. They are about to learn the truth. The truth, one asked. Turned back to face her staff. Her eyes were bright with something that might have been anger or might have been hope. The truth is that we have been giving far more than we have been receiving. For 53 years, humanity has been the backbone of this union. We just never made them see it. She paused. Now they will see. She sat down at her desk and began composing the message that the council had allowed her to send. It would be short, it would be simple, and it would change everything. Outside the embassy, the alien city continued its busy life. No one noticed the human ships beginning to move. No one saw them turning away from their posts, their stations, their rescue missions. The silence was coming, and the galaxy was not ready. The first day after the expulsion vote was quiet. Most species in the Union paid little attention to the human departure. Earth was a small world on the edge of the galaxy. Its people were young compared to the ancient civilizations that ruled the stars. Losing them seemed like losing a single drop from a vast ocean. On the second day, things began to change. Commander Wren of the Mining Corporation stared at his communication screen with growing fear. The screen showed nothing but static. He had been trying to reach Union emergency services for the past 4 hours, and no one was answering. His ship, the Iron Fortune, floated in the middle of an asteroid field. 2 other mining vessels drifted nearby, their hulls damaged by the unexpected collision. 17 crew members were injured. 3 were dying. Try again, Wren ordered his communications officer. The officer, a young with pale gray scales, shook his head. Sir, I have tried every frequency. Union emergency is not responding. Neither is the regional patrol. Neither is anyone else. Wren slammed his fist against the wall. The sound echoed through the damaged ship. Someone must be listening. We pay taxes to the Union specifically for emergency services. Where are they? The communications officer hesitated. Sir, I did receive one response, from a human ship. Human? Wren felt his stomach tighten. What did they say? They said they were sorry, but they could not help us. They said they were ordered to return to Earth immediately. Then they sent us contact information for Union emergency services. The officer paused. The same service that is not answering. Wren stood very still. He remembered the vote from 2 days ago. He remembered raising his own hand in favor of expulsion. He remembered thinking that humans were becoming too numerous, too ambitious, too present in every corner of the galaxy. Now he understood why they had been present everywhere. The human rescue teams, he said slowly, they were always the first to respond to emergencies, always. Yes, sir, the officer confirmed. Human Station 12 was the closest emergency facility to our sector. It was shut down yesterday. Shut down, why? Because, the officer's voice trailed off. He did not need to finish the sentence. They both knew why. 300 light-years away, a similar scene was playing out on the world of Prime. The crystal beings who lived there had built their civilization around a network of energy towers. These towers collected power from their sun and distributed it across the planet. Without them, the would slowly freeze and die. Chief Engineer stood at the base of Tower 17. She looked up at the massive structure with despair. A crack had appeared in its crystal surface, and energy was leaking out in dangerous amounts. If the crack spread, the entire tower would collapse. The failure would cascade to the neighboring towers, and half of the continent would lose power. "We need the human engineers," said. Her voice created small vibrations in the air that her translator converted to words. "They are the only ones who understand this type of repair." Her assistant, a younger crystal being named Tal, shifted nervously. "The humans are gone. They left Union space yesterday." "I know they left. I need them to come back." "They cannot come back. The Council declared them hostile. Any human ship entering Union space will be destroyed." Turned to face her assistant. Light refracted through her crystalline body in patterns that showed frustration. "Then we will lose this tower, and the 12 towers connected to it, and the 40 million who depend on them for warmth. Perhaps the Council will make an exception." "The Council will do nothing," interrupted. "I contacted them this morning. They said they should have been maintaining their own towers instead of relying on human contractors." She paused. "They forgot that human contractors are the ones who built these towers in the first place." The truth was beginning to spread across the galaxy like a slow poison. In the first hours after the expulsion, no one had noticed the absence of humanity. By the end of the second day, the absence was impossible to ignore. In the Dominion, a major shipyard reported that production had stopped. Their automated assembly lines depended on software written by human programmers. Without regular updates and maintenance, the software had frozen. In the Collective, 3 agricultural worlds discovered that their irrigation systems were failing. The systems used pumps designed by human engineers. No one else knew how to repair them. In the floating cities of the Empire, medical facilities ran out of a critical medication. The medication was manufactured exclusively on Earth. No other species had ever bothered to learn the formula. Ambassador sat in his office on his and read report after report of systems failing, supplies running low, and emergencies going unanswered. His fur was pressed flat against his body in a display of stress that his species could not hide. "How is this possible?" he muttered to himself. "Humans were only in the Union for 50 years. How did they become so embedded in everything?" His aide, a nervous creature named, entered the room with another stack of reports. "Ambassador, we have received more complaints. The Trade Guild is reporting that 30% of their shipping routes have stopped functioning." "Stopped functioning? Routes do not stop functioning." "They do when the navigation data was provided by human cartographers," said. "Apparently, humans mapped most of the safe passages through the outer regions. When they left, they took their maps with them." Stared at his aide in disbelief. "They took their maps. That information was shared with the Union. It should be in our databases." "It was shared under a usage agreement," explained. "The agreement stated that the data belonged to Earth and was only licensed to the Union for as long as Earth remained a member. When membership ended, so did the license." "That is ridiculous. No one reads those agreements." "The humans apparently wrote them very carefully." Stood up and walked to his window. Outside, the sky of his was a deep purple color. Ships flew through the air, going about their daily business. Everything looked normal, but he knew that beneath the surface, things were falling apart. "What else?" he asked quietly. Consulted his notes. The Universal Medical Database has removed all entries contributed by human researchers. That includes treatments for 47 diseases that affect non-human species. The Universal Translation Matrix has removed all human languages, which also removed several thousand loanwords and concepts that other languages had adopted from humans. The Emergency Response Network has lost 80% of its volunteer staff. 80% were human. 80% were trained by humans, corrected. The actual human staff was smaller, but they trained everyone else. Now the trained staff are refusing to work without their human supervisors. Closed his eyes. He remembered sitting in the great hall, raising his hand to vote for expulsion. He remembered feeling righteous. Humans were spreading too fast, taking too much, becoming too important. Something had to be done. Now he understood that he had been blind. Humans had not been taking from the Union. They had been giving. Constantly, quietly, without asking for recognition or reward. And no one had noticed until the giving stopped. On Earth, the mood was very different. People went about their lives as if nothing had changed. Ships returned to their home ports. Workers came back from distant stations. Families were reunited. In the capital city, a crowd had gathered outside the government building. They were not protesting. They were celebrating. Someone had put up a large screen that showed a counter, hours since expulsion. Next to it, another counter showed the number of distress calls received from Union space. The second number was growing rapidly. Ambassador watched from her office window. Her assistant one stood beside her. "Is this right?" he asked. "People are celebrating while others suffer." Did not turn away from the window. They are not celebrating suffering. They are celebrating freedom. For 50 years we gave everything to the Union. We asked for nothing in return except basic respect, and they responded by throwing us out. But people will die because of our withdrawal. People were already dying, said. Human rescue teams saved thousands of lives every year. Human doctors treated diseases that other species ignored. Human engineers built systems that entire civilizations depended on. And how did the Union repay us? By calling us pests. By saying we spread too quickly. By voting 847 to 1 to remove us. She finally turned to face one. Her expression was sad but determined. "I do not enjoy this," she said. "I take no pleasure in watching the galaxy struggle, but they need to learn. They need to understand what humanity truly meant to them. Otherwise, this will happen again, and next time we might not be able to come back." One nodded slowly. He understood her logic, even if it was hard to accept. "How long will we wait?" he asked. "Until they ask," replied. "Until they realize that expulsion was a mistake. Until they come to us with open hands instead of closed fists." She paused. "It will not take long." She was right. On the third day the first request came. It was not from the High Council. They were too proud to admit their error so quickly. Instead, it came from a small world on the outer edge of Union space, a planet called. The message was simple: please help. Our water purification system has failed. Human engineers built it 20 years ago. No one else knows how to repair it. 3 million people will have no clean water within a week. We beg you to send help. Read the message with a heavy heart. Then she composed her response. We sympathize with your situation. However, Earth is no longer a member of the Galactic Union. We cannot send personnel into Union space without permission from the High Council. Please direct your request to them. The reply came within the hour. The Council says they cannot help. They say is responsible for its own infrastructure. Please, we have children here. Closed her eyes. This was the hardest part. She wanted to help. Every instinct told her to send ships to save those children, to do what humans had always done. But she knew that saving them now would change nothing. The Union would continue to take humanity for granted. The contempt would continue. The exploitation would continue. And eventually, another vote would come, another expulsion, another rejection. I am sorry, she wrote back. Our hands are tied. We cannot help without council approval. She sent the message and then sat in silence for a long time. Outside her window, Earth continued to turn. Ships came and went. People lived their lives. The silence continued. 1 week had passed since the expulsion vote. In that time, the Galactic Union had experienced more crises than it normally saw in a year. Emergency services were overwhelmed. Supply lines were broken. Systems that had worked perfectly for decades were suddenly failing without explanation. High Counselor sat in his private chamber and reviewed the damage reports. Each one was worse than the last. A plague outbreak on 3 worlds because human-developed vaccines were no longer available. A famine beginning on the agricultural moon of Daris because human logistics experts had coordinated their food distribution. A war nearly starting between 2 neighboring systems because human diplomats had been mediating their border dispute. "How did we not see this?" asked aloud. His aide, a quiet being named, stood in the corner of the room. "We saw what we wanted to see," replied carefully. "Humans were everywhere, but they were quiet about it. They did not demand attention or recognition. They simply worked. And now that they are gone, everything is falling apart. Not everything, but enough." Push the reports aside. His old body ached and his mind was tired. He had ruled for centuries, guiding the Union through countless challenges. This was different. This was not an enemy he could fight or a problem he could negotiate. This was simply absence, and absence could not be defeated. "Summon the council," he ordered. "We need to discuss options." The council meeting was held in a smaller room than usual. Many delegates were too busy dealing with local emergencies to attend in person. Those who did come looked exhausted and frightened. "The situation is unsustainable," said Councillor Myra, the purple gas being. "We have received over 10,000 requests for assistance in the past week. We can answer perhaps 100 of them. The rest will have to wait or be ignored." "Where were these requests going before?" asked Councillor. "To human volunteers," Myra admitted. "They had a network of response teams spread across Union space. Those teams handled the majority of emergency calls. We never realized how many." "Because we never asked," said Councillor Wren, the representative. "We assumed the Union was handling these situations. We did not know that the Union mostly meant humans." The chamber fell silent. This was an uncomfortable truth that no one wanted to accept. A young aide entered the room carrying a data pad. She approached High Counselor and whispered something in his ear. His expression changed from tired to alarmed. "What is it?" Counselor Myra asked. Took the data pad and read its contents. Then he looked up at his fellow counselors. "The humans have released a message," he said. "It was sent to every world in Union space simultaneously. They are calling it a final accounting." "Accounting of what?" Activated a display in the center of the room. A human face appeared. It was not Ambassador, but a man with short black hair and serious eyes. A caption identified him as Counselor Ho of the Earth Global Council. "Citizens of the Galactic Union," Ho began. "By now, you have noticed certain changes in your daily lives. Services you relied upon have stopped. Systems you trusted have failed. Help that always came is no longer coming." The alien counselors watched in uncomfortable silence as the human continued. "For 53 years, Earth has been a member of your Union. During that time, we contributed more than most species ever knew. We did not do this for reward or recognition. We did it because we believed in cooperation. We believed in helping our neighbors. We believed that the galaxy was better when we worked together." Ho paused. His expression remained calm, but there was something hard in his eyes. "In return for our contributions, we were called pests. We were accused of spreading too quickly, taking too much, becoming too present. And then we were expelled by a vote of 847 to 1. A map appeared on the screen, showing the entire galaxy. Points of light began to appear on the map, each one representing a human contribution. "This is what we gave," Ho said. "Let me show you." The first category appeared, medical research. The map filled with thousands of points of light. Human researchers developed treatments for over 500 diseases affecting non-human species. We shared this research freely, asking only for basic medical cooperation in return. These treatments saved an estimated 40 million lives per year. The lights faded and a new category appeared: emergency response. Human volunteers staffed 73% of all emergency response stations in Union space. We answered distress calls from every species, regardless of politics or history. Our rescue teams saved an average of 12,000 lives per month. More categories followed. Navigation and mapping. Humans had charted safe routes through the most dangerous regions of space. Translation and communication. Human linguists had created bridges between languages that had never been able to understand each other. Infrastructure development. Human engineers had built systems on hundreds of worlds that could not have built them alone. The numbers were staggering. The alien counselors watched with growing horror as they realized the true scope of human contributions. "You did not know any of this," Ho continued, "because we did not advertise it. We simply did the work. We assumed that our actions would speak for themselves. We assumed that the Union would recognize our value through what we gave, not through what we demanded." He shook his head slowly. "We were wrong, and now we are gone, not because we wanted to leave, but because you chose to send us away." The screen showed a final image: Earth, blue and green and beautiful, hanging alone in the darkness of space. "We do not seek revenge," Ho said. "We do not wish harm upon any species in the Union, but we will not return to a partnership that does not value us. We will not continue giving to those who see us only as problems to be managed. If you want our help, you must ask for it. If you want our partnership, you must prove that you deserve it. The choice is yours." The message ended. The room fell silent. High Counselor stared at the empty screen for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice heavy with something that might have been shame. "We made a mistake." The other counselors looked at him in surprise. Rarely admitted error. He was too old, too proud, too certain of his own judgment. "Counselor," Myra asked carefully. "The humans were right," said. "We saw them as problems because they were different from us. They grew quickly. They spread widely. They involved themselves in everything. We assumed this meant they were dangerous." He stood up slowly, his old joints protesting. "We never considered that they might simply be helpful, that their involvement in everything was because they wanted to contribute, not because they wanted to control. We were so focused on what they might become that we ignored what they already were." Counselor Wren spoke up. "What do we do now? We cannot simply ask them to return. The vote was nearly unanimous. If we reverse it now, we will look weak." "We already look weak," replied. "We look like children who threw away their toys and then cried when we realized we needed them. The question is whether we have enough sense to ask for them back." Another counselor, a being with too many eyes, shook his head. "The humans said we must prove we deserve their partnership. How do we prove such a thing?" Thought about this question carefully. He remembered watching Ambassador leave the Great Hall after the vote. He remembered her calm acceptance, her quiet smile, her simple request to send one final message. She had known. Even then, she had known what was going to happen, and she had not tried to stop it. "I think I understand," said slowly. "They do not want us to prove ourselves through actions. They want us to prove ourselves through admission. They want us to say publicly that we were wrong." "An apology," Wren sounded disgusted. "We are the Galactic Union. We do not apologize to single worlds." "Then we will continue to suffer," replied. "And the suffering will grow worse with each passing day. How many deaths will it take before your pride allows an apology?" The room fell silent again. No one had an answer. On Earth, Ambassador watched the council meeting through a remote feed. One of the advantages of being expelled was that the Union had stopped monitoring human communications. They no longer cared what Earth did or said. This meant that Earth's intelligence services could operate without interference. "They are discussing our message," one reported. "The old one seems to understand. The others are still resistant. Give them time, said. Pride dies slowly, but necessity kills it eventually. She turned away from the screen and looked out her window at the night sky. Stars filled the darkness, each one a sun with worlds of its own. Somewhere out there, people were suffering because humanity was no longer there to help them. It hurt. She would not pretend otherwise. Every report of a failed rescue, every news story of a system collapsing, every desperate plea for assistance that had to be refused, they all weighed on her heart. But she knew this was necessary. For too long, humanity had given without receiving. They had helped without being appreciated. They had built the foundation of galactic civilization while being treated as newcomers and pests. Now the foundation was cracking, and everyone could see what had been holding it together. How much longer do you think it will take? One asked. Considered the question. The council will argue for another few days. They will try other solutions first. They will attempt to replace our systems with their own. They will fail. And then, when there is nothing left to try, they will come to us. And we will accept them back. Shook her head. No, we will let them accept us back, on our terms, with our conditions, and with a clear understanding of what humanity truly means to the galaxy. She turned to face her assistant directly. When they come to us, they will come as equals asking for help, not as masters giving permission. That is the difference we are fighting for. One nodded slowly. He was beginning to understand. Outside the window, the stars continued to shine. Somewhere among them, a galaxy was learning a difficult lesson about value, about appreciation, and about what it truly meant to lose something you never knew you needed. The lesson was not finished yet, but it was getting closer to its end. 2 weeks after the expulsion, the Galactic Union headquarters was in chaos. Ships arrived constantly, carrying delegates from worlds that had never bothered to attend council meetings before. Emergency sessions ran day and night. Arguments filled the halls, and fear filled the hearts of every being present. High Counselor had not slept in 3 days. His body was failing, but his mind remained sharp. He watched the chaos around him and knew that the end was coming. Either the Union would bend, or it would break. The delegation from has arrived, his aide announced. They are demanding an audience. Send them in, said tiredly. The Hesperians entered his chamber. They were a tall, thin species with silver skin and large dark eyes. Their leader, a female named, approached his desk with barely controlled anger. 3 million of my people have no clean water, she said. Children are dying, our hospitals are overflowing, and your council tells us to wait. We are trying to find alternative solutions, replied. Our engineers are studying the human designs. Your engineers cannot even read the human designs, interrupted. They have been studying them for 10 days and made no progress. Meanwhile, my people die. She stepped closer, and for a moment thought she might attack him. You voted to expel the humans, she said. You convinced us all that they were a problem. Now they are gone and we are the ones suffering. This is your fault, yours and everyone who raised their hand in that vote. Did not argue, he could not, she was right. What would you have me do? He asked quietly. Apologize, said. Bring the humans back. Do whatever it takes to fix this disaster you created. The council is divided. Many members still refuse to admit error. Then convince them. You are the High Counselor. You have ruled this union for centuries. Use your power. Looked at the desperate woman before him. He saw the fear in her eyes, the exhaustion, the hope that was slowly dying. He had seen this look before, on countless faces throughout his long life. It was the look of someone who had run out of options. Very well, he said. I will call an emergency session of the full council. We will vote on sending a formal request to Earth. A request, repeated, not a demand. We are in no position to demand anything from humanity. We must ask and hope they agree. Nodded slowly, Some of the tension left her body. "Thank you, counselor, that is all I ask." After she left, sat alone in his chamber for a long time. He thought about the vote 2 weeks ago. He thought about the confidence he had felt, the certainty that removing humans was the right decision. He thought about how quickly that certainty had crumbled. Pride was a dangerous thing. He had lived long enough to know this, but knowing something and avoiding it were different matters entirely. The emergency session was held the next day. The Great Hall was fuller than it had been for the expulsion vote. Every seat was occupied. Many delegates stood in the aisles or watched from balconies above. Stood at the central podium and looked out at the assembled representatives of the galaxy. He could feel their fear, their anger, their desperation. They were looking to him for answers. "Friends," he began, "we gather today to address a crisis of our own making. 2 weeks ago, we voted to expel Earth from our union. At the time, many of us believed this was necessary. We thought humans were growing too fast, spreading too far, becoming too involved in our affairs." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We were wrong." A murmur ran through the hall, continued. "I have spent the past 2 weeks reviewing reports from across Union space. I have seen the scale of human contributions to our civilization. I have learned things that shame me deeply." He looked down at his notes, then pushed them aside. "I will not read statistics to you. The numbers are available for anyone who wishes to see them. Instead, I will tell you what I have concluded." He looked up at the assembly with old, tired eyes. "Humans did not join the Union to take from us. They joined to give. For 53 years, they gave without asking for recognition. They helped without demanding reward. They built systems we needed, provided services we relied upon, and asked only for basic respect in return." His voice grew stronger. "And how did we repay them? We called them pests. We accused them of ambition when they were only trying to help. We expelled them from our community because we were too proud to admit that we needed them." He pointed at the assembly. "This is our failure, not theirs. We must correct it." The delegate from the Dominion stood up. "What do you propose, counselor?" "I propose that we send a formal delegation to Earth. We will ask them to return to the Union. We will apologize for our treatment of them. And we will offer new terms of membership that recognize their true value to our community." "Apologize," shouted another delegate. "The Galactic Union does not apologize." "Then the Galactic Union will continue to suffer," replied coldly. "And when our systems fail and our people die, we can comfort ourselves with our pride. I am sure it will keep us warm in the darkness." The hall fell silent, continued. "I am not asking you to like this. I am not asking you to be happy about it. I am asking you to be wise. We have 2 choices before us. We can admit our mistake and try to repair our relationship with humanity, or we can let our pride destroy everything we have built." He stepped back from the podium. "I have made my choice. Now you must make yours. All those in favor of sending a delegation to Earth, please indicate." The voting began. Watch the numbers climb on the holographic display. This time, the count was different. 712 in favor, 135 against. The resolution passed. 3 days later, a Union ship approached Earth space. It was not a military vessel but a diplomatic cruiser, its hull painted white to indicate peaceful intentions. On board were 12 counselors, including himself, along with staff and translators. Ambassador met them at the orbital station above Earth. She stood alone, without guards or aides, wearing the same simple blue suit she had worn at the expulsion vote. "High Counselor," she said, "welcome to Earth." Bowed slightly, it was a human gesture, one he had never used before. "Ambassador, thank you for agreeing to receive us." "It would be rude to refuse," replied. She did not smile, but her voice was not hostile either. "Please follow me. We have prepared a meeting room." The delegation followed her through the station's corridors. Human crew members watched them pass with expressions that ranged from curiosity to anger. The counselors felt deeply uncomfortable. They were accustomed to being treated with respect everywhere they went. Here, they were unwanted guests. The meeting room was plain and functional. A long table dominated the space, with chairs arranged on both sides. Ambassadors sat at one end. The Union delegation took their places on the other side. "You have traveled a long way," said. "I assume you have something important to say." Nodded. "We have come to acknowledge our error. The expulsion of Earth was a mistake. We understand that now." "Do you?" asked. Her voice was calm but sharp. "Tell me what you understand." Hesitated. This was harder than he had expected. Speaking in the abstract was easy. Admitting specific failures was painful. "We understand that humanity contributed far more to the Union than we recognized. We understand that many of our systems depended on human expertise and support. We understand that your departure has caused significant hardship across Union space." "Significant hardship," repeated. "That is an interesting way to describe it. Shall I tell you what we have observed?" She did not wait for permission. "In the past 2 weeks, 47,000 Union citizens have died from causes directly related to our withdrawal. Emergency services failed to reach them. Medical treatments were unavailable. Infrastructure collapsed without warning." She paused. 47,000 people, counselor. That number grows every day." Felt the weight of those deaths settle on his shoulders. "We know, and we are deeply sorry." "Sorry," stood up and walked to the window. Earth hung in the darkness below, blue and green and full of life. "I have received messages from across the galaxy. Some people beg for our help. Others curse us for abandoning them. A few still blame us for the original problems, even now." She turned back to face the delegation. "Do you know what the hardest part has been? It has not been watching you suffer. It has been preventing my own people from helping. Humans do not like to stand by when others are in pain. It goes against our nature. Every day, I receive requests from human volunteers who want to return to their old stations, to help their former colleagues, to do what they always did." Her voice softened slightly. "I have had to tell them no. I have had to explain that helping now would change nothing, that we would simply return to the old pattern of giving without receiving, of being used without being valued." "Understood. That is why you are making us come to you, why you are forcing us to ask." "Yes," confirmed. "Because words are easy. Anyone can apologize when they are desperate. What matters is what comes after. Will you go back to treating us as pests once the crisis is over? Will you forget our value again when you no longer need us?" "We will not forget," said. "I give you my word." "Your word," shook her head. "I mean no offense, counselor, but your word is not enough. We need guarantees. We need changes to the fundamental structure of our relationship with the Union." She returned to her seat and produced a document from her briefcase. "These are our terms. They are not negotiable." Took the document and began to read. The other counselors leaned in to see. The terms were extensive. Full restoration of Earth's membership, with immediate effect. A formal apology to be broadcast across all Union communication channels. Recognition of Earth's territorial sovereignty, including exclusive rights to human-developed technologies and methods. A permanent seat on the High Council, with full voting rights. And a new clause in the Union Charter stating that no member world could be expelled without a unanimous vote. Looked up, these terms are significant. "Yes," agreed. "They are meant to ensure that what happened to us cannot happen again, to us or to anyone else. The Council will need to discuss this." "You have 6 hours," said. "After that, we will assume you have chosen to continue without us." Stared at her. 6 hours. We traveled 3 days to reach you. Surely we deserve more time than that." His expression did not change. "My people have been waiting 2 weeks for an answer. 6 hours is generous." She stood up again. "I will have refreshments sent to this room. Please let my staff know when you have reached a decision." She left without another word. The Union delegation sat in stunned silence. Finally, one of the younger counselors spoke. "She cannot be serious. These demands are outrageous." Shook his head slowly. "No, they are not. They are exactly what we deserve." He looked at the document in his hands. Then he looked at his fellow counselors. "We have 6 hours. I suggest we use them wisely." The 6 hours passed slowly. Inside the meeting room, the Union counselors argued, debated, and struggled with their pride. Some wanted to accept the terms immediately. Others called them insulting and demanded revisions. A few suggested leaving without an agreement and trying to manage on their own. High Counselor listened to all of them. He let them speak their minds and exhaust their objections, and when they finally fell silent, he gave his own opinion. "We have no choice," he said simply. "We can argue about pride and fairness all we want, but the truth remains. Without humanity, our union is dying. Every hour we spend debating is another hour that our people suffer." The young counselor, whose name was, shook his head. "If we accept these terms, we will look weak. Other species will think they can make demands of us too." "Good," replied. The word surprised everyone. "Perhaps they should make demands. Perhaps we have been too confident for too long. A little humility might serve us well." Counselor Myra, the purple gas being, spoke carefully. "There is wisdom in what you say, but the permanent council seat troubles me. Earth is a young world. Their civilization is barely a few thousand years old. How can we give them equal standing with species that have existed for millions of years?" "Because age does not equal value," answered. "The oldest species in our union are often the most useless. They have grown tired and complacent. They contribute nothing except complaints." He looked around the table. "Humanity is young, yes, but in 50 years they did more for the galaxy than many ancient species have done in. They deserve recognition." The debate continued, but the momentum had shifted. One by one, the counselors came to accept what had already understood. They had no leverage. They had no alternatives. They could only accept humanity's terms and hope for the best. With 30 minutes remaining, called for a vote. The result was unanimous. All 12 counselors agreed to accept Earth's conditions. Ambassador returned to the meeting room exactly 6 hours after she had left. She entered alone, her face showing nothing of what she might be feeling. "Have you reached a decision?" she asked. Stood and bowed formally. "We have. The Galactic Union accepts Earth's terms in full. We apologize for the treatment you received. We recognize your sovereignty and your contributions, and we welcome you back as full members of our community with all the rights and privileges that entails." Was quiet for a moment. Then, for the first time since the crisis began, she allowed herself to smile. "Thank you, Counselor. Earth accepts your acceptance." She extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement, looked at it for a moment, then took it carefully in his own. The feeling was strange. Human hands were so different from his own, but it was also meaningful in a way he had not expected. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we begin the work of rebuilding," replied. "Our teams will deploy immediately to the most critical areas. The emergency response network will be restored within days. Medical supplies will start flowing by the end of the week." "That quickly?" "We never stopped preparing," admitted. "We knew you would come eventually. We have been ready." Felt something he had not experienced in a very long time, surprise. "You were that confident we would accept your terms." "No," said. "We were that hopeful. Confidence and hope are different things, Counselor. Confidence means knowing what will happen. Hope means wanting it to happen anyway." She released his hand and turned to address the full delegation. "The formal apology will need to be broadcast within 24 hours. I will provide you with the specifications. After that, we will schedule a ceremony to mark Earth's return to the Union. I suggest holding it in the Great Hall where the expulsion vote took place. It will send a clear message." The counselors nodded. Everything was moving very fast now, but none of them wanted to slow it down. They had seen what happened when humanity was absent. They had no desire to experience it again. 1 week later, the Great Hall was filled once more. The same delegates who had voted for expulsion now gathered to witness humanity's return. The same seats, the same stage, the same holographic displays, but the mood was completely different. High Counselor stood at the central podium. His voice, broadcast to every world in Union space, carried the weight of formal apology. "To the people of Earth," he said, "on behalf of the Galactic Union, I offer our sincere and complete apology. We treated you unfairly. We failed to recognize your value. We allowed pride and fear to guide our actions instead of wisdom and gratitude." He paused, looking out at the assembly. "For 53 years, humanity gave freely to this union. You asked nothing in return except basic respect. Will you even that simple thing? This was wrong, and we are sorry." The words echoed through the hall. Many delegates shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Others lowered their heads in shame. A few openly wept, though whether from regret or relief was hard to say. "From this day forward," continued, "Earth will hold a permanent seat on the High Council. Their vote will carry equal weight to any other member. Their sovereignty will be respected absolutely. And no world, including Earth, may ever again be expelled from this union without the unanimous consent of all members." He turned to face the human delegation, which included Ambassador, Counselor Ho, and several other officials. "We welcome you back. We are grateful for your return, and we promise to remember the lessons of these past weeks for as long as this union endures." Ambassador rose and approached the podium. She and stood side by side, facing the assembly together. "Thank you, High Counselor," said. "Earth accepts this apology in the spirit it is given. We bear no grudge against those who voted for our expulsion. We understand that fear can make people do things they later regret." She looked out at the thousands of alien faces watching her. "But we do have one request, not a demand, a request. We ask that you remember this moment, not because we want you to feel guilty, but because we want you to understand what happened and why." She took a deep breath before continuing. "Humanity is a young species. We know this. We have only been traveling among the stars for a short time compared to many of you, but youth does not mean worthlessness. New ideas are not threats. Different ways of doing things are not attacks on your traditions." Her voice grew stronger. "We spread quickly because we wanted to help. We involved ourselves in everything because we saw need everywhere. We built systems and trained people and volunteered our time because that is who we are. It is not a strategy or a plan. It is simply our nature." She smiled slightly. "Some of you call us ambitious. Perhaps we are, but our ambition is not to rule or control. Our ambition is to matter, to make a difference, to leave the galaxy a little better than we found it." She looked at, then back at the assembly. "That is what humanity wants. That is what we have always wanted. And now that you understand this, perhaps we can truly work together as equals." The hall erupted in applause. It started slowly, from the delegates who had been most affected by humanity's absence. Then it spread, growing louder and louder until it filled the entire space. Delegates from hundreds of worlds stood and cheered for the small species they had once tried to throw away. Stood quietly at the podium, letting the sound wash over her. She thought about all the work that still lay ahead, the systems to rebuild, the relationships to repair, the trust to earn back. It would take years, maybe decades, to fully heal the wounds of the past weeks. But it was a start. Later that evening, after the ceremonies and speeches were finished, found herself alone on an observation deck overlooking the Union headquarters. The city stretched out below her, lights twinkling in the alien night. Ships moved through the sky like slow-moving stars. One found her there, 2 cups of tea in his hands. He offered one to her silently, and she accepted with a grateful nod. "We did it," he said. "We did," agreed, "though I'm not sure what it really means yet." "It means we have a seat at the table, a real seat with real power. It means they cannot throw us out again whenever they feel like it." Sipped her tea. "True, but power is only useful if we use it wisely. We could become exactly what they feared, too influential, too present, too involved. We need to be careful." "Or we could just keep being ourselves," one suggested. "Keep helping, keep building, keep doing what we have always done." Smiled. "That is the plan. We never wanted to change who we are. We just wanted to be appreciated for it." She looked out at the city again. Somewhere down there, human engineers were already back at work, repairing systems that had broken during the silence. Human doctors were treating patients. Human diplomats were mediating disputes. Human volunteers were answering emergency calls. The galaxy had tried to function without humanity. It had failed. Now humanity was back, and things were returning to normal. But normal would never be quite the same. The Union would remember what happened when they lost Earth. They would remember the chaos, the suffering, the desperate realization of how much they had depended on beings they had never properly appreciated. And humanity would remember too. They would remember how it felt to be expelled, to be called pests, to be thrown away by those they had tried to help. They would not hold grudges, that was not their nature, but they would not forget either. The relationship between Earth and the galaxy had changed forever. It was no longer a relationship of giver and taker. It was a partnership of equals, built on mutual respect and hard-won understanding. Finished her tea and turned to leave. There was much work to be done tomorrow, and she needed rest. But as she walked away, she allowed herself one final thought. They had done something remarkable, not through weapons or threats, not through anger or revenge. They had simply shown the galaxy what life looked like without them. And that had been enough. The stars continued to shine overhead. Somewhere among them, a young species was finding its place in the universe, not as servants or guests or pests, but as partners, as equals, as humans. And the galaxy, whether it liked it or not, would never be the same.